Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we are talking about lethal RPGs.
Yes.
I don't know what that means, but there you go.
Lethal, as in deadly.
I know what the word means.
Oh, okay.
Why are we talking about lethal RPGs?
Somebody on Reddit asked a question about lethal RPGs. Somebody said that they were playing D&D and solely had played D&D and was looking for something more lethal because they thought that D&D was
Too heroic?
maybe too heroic, right? They wanted something a little bit more greedier, I guess. The person didn't really explain. They just said that they wanted examples of lethal RPGs.
Well, I've heard this complaint about D&D before.
Right. We even discussed it.
I don't think I don't have a problem with it, but I can understand some people want it a little grittier. A little meaner,
Leaner.
a little harder,
Yes.
a little more deadly.
Yes, a little bit more deadly. So I think when we look at RPGs, there are a ton of them, right? And some are extremely lethal, some are extremely complicated, but they're all are trying to do something with that lethality. What does it mean? So I'm going to go in the Wayback Machine.
Oh no, we're all in trouble now.
I think about 1984. I'm not sure when. What is this game called? Rollmaster first appeared. There's been numerous iterations, and they have the newest one. It went through a couple of ownerships. It went through a different publisher, and then the original person who put it together, or people who put it together, got the rights back and are now have called it back to Iron Crown Industries.
Today,
yeah.
Oh, so you went in the Wayback Machine and then you came back home.
Yes, but we're only going to talk about the first and second edition because that's the only ones I really know about.
And this game is called Rollmaster.
Well, originally it was called, I don't know what originally they called it, but they had a series of books, and they were all called like parts of a system. So there was Arms Law, right, that dealt with weapons.
Oh my God, this sounds really familiar. I was going to say I don't know anything about this game, but...
And then there was Claw Law.
Claw Law.
There was Spell Law. And then I think there was some sort of a campaign.
I just want to know, is Claw Law like a monster manual?
Probably a monster manual plus hand-to-hand fighting. Like I said, I really didn't delve too deeply into Rollmaster back then because I was happy playing AD&D. I mean, AD&D was what we were playing for a fantasy game. And when we were playing AD&D, I really didn't venture too far from the AD&D. Another games, genres I did like Dark Conspiracy because it was kind of a near apocalyptic game. I bought Space Opera, bought Gamma World, those type of games, something that was different. But for the most part, I didn't want to play or learn a new fantasy role-playing game.
Note to the 5 people who listen to this, I would like to play Dark Conspiracy. Someone run the game for me.
Okay, so Rollmaster, what makes it lethal, right? Well, one is a percentile system, and for whatever reason, percentile systems have this idea that they're lethal. They're more dangerous. They want to be realistic. And
is this the one with all the charts?
Yes. Some people called it Chartmaster, but back in the day, but I think it was taken over by some other company, some other rule set. So what made this one particularly lethal was exactly those charts. They had a complete page for every type of critical hit. So if you got a critical hit or critical fumble, that was the thing. Mm-hmm. Both. There was critical fumbles, and then there was critical hits. Now, critical hits are good if they're done against the person you're...
Was it like Space Opera where if you get a hit, then you get a roll on the where you hit table and all that stuff?
Space Opera doesn't have that. You do have a two-hit table.
Two-hit table.
You do have where it hit.
Yeah.
So this was... You're right. It would have a location, and it would have a type of weapon. So if you were hit by an arrow, let's say, and you rolled a 00, which was the best, you'd probably hit somebody in the eye socket, and then they would describe what it did, and then it would say instant kill.
I see.
Or instant death. And so the chart was very weighted against, well, not against, but leaned into doing a lot of extra damage. And so they had, not only did they have a critical hit table, they had a critical fumble table. So, for example, and I already told you about this one, that somebody was reading to me what happens if you rolled a certain number on a critical fumble for bow, and that as you draw back to on the bowstring, you let go at an inopportune time, and you take off your ear, right?
Yeah.
And in the practical sense, you're missing an ear, and that probably hurts a little bit. But
little bit.
But they'd also say that you lose some perception or other skill like that. So it would have some consequences, and some of them long term. Like you could lose limbs, you could lose your arm, leg, depending on what the critical hit or fumble was. So again, and it was like a lot of charts, right? It was almost for any like slashing weapon, piercing weapon. Then they had a fumble table, and then they had a critical hit table. So there was a lot of charts.
A lot of charts.
A lot of charts.
So it was a more deadly system because of the charts?
Right, because if you rolled a critical hit or critical fumble, you could end up
Dead?
aiming yourself,
Yeah.
or killing your opponent instantly. And of course, they could do the same to you.
Right.
Right. So, why was it so lethal? I think they were, other than D&D, unlike D&D, they were trying to be a little bit more realistic. That damage was based on the weapon you used and all this other stuff. So that's the reason I think that this game was particularly lethal. They were trying to be realistic, and they wanted it a more grittier experience. For
Was
the
it
player.
still a fantasy role-playing game like D&D?
Fantasy role-playing game? Later on, they came out with Space Master, which was basically the same thing.
But in space.
Yes, they had charts. They had critical fumble, critical hits.
Did the ships get into fights with these charts? Or was it just people?
I don't remember if there was any ship-to-ship combat, but I know there was a lot of personal weapons.
Yeah.
Melee and range.
Okay, so what's the next lethal game that you got?
I want to make sure I covered everything in my little notes. Yes, I think I did. I think what was also kind of interesting about Rollmaster and the charts is that a lot of people got a kick out of reading them, even if they weren't like playing the game. I remember people just reading things off the chart and chuckling.
Well, I've never played Rollmaster, but I know when we played Space Opera that reading the chart was interesting for just what happened when you got hit in the leg, right?
I don't think Space Opera has any charts like that, like critical.
It has
charts.
Not critical hit, but just the.
Oh, just where he hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and this one is even more specific, right? It actually gives you a little paragraph or a couple sentences as to what happens to you. And then people would chuckle, oh, look at this. If you roll a 67, this is what happens, blah, blah, blah. So I think that was a morbid humor about the system. And think about humor. Paranoia is an RPG also. Came out in 1985. I remember buying the first box set. I was totally enthralled by the idea of it. It was, they called it a humorously dark future game.
The computer was a little off.
The computer was your friend, but it was also crazy. It would send you on missions that were
nonsensical.
Sometimes they contradictory, the different missions or the different goal objectives. And of course, things were illegal. Like if you belonged to a secret society, it was illegal.
But you had to belong to a secret society.
And everybody belonged to a secret society. And if you were a mutant, you could also be summarily executed because mutants were bad. And everybody, of course, is a mutant.
It was a very funny and fun game, but also deadly because you live with your clones, so you get 6 chances or something to.
Right, you start off with a 6-pack of characters.
Yeah,
and they had a funny naming system, and then what would happen is the last number, like a social security number, with A's, B's, and all kinds of different letters. Usually, they try to spell out something funny, like on people's license plates. But personalized license plates, and then and the last number would be the number of the clone.
Yeah.
So it would be 1 for the first clone, -2, -3, -4, and people would get a little bit more cautious when they got to 5 and 6 because that's like the last 2 clones you have, and it was a percentile system. It was very deadly because the characters didn't have a lot of hit points. and everything they would run across did a lot of damage, right? If the lasers themselves, the personal weapons that they used, would do a lot of damage, they would fall into vats of this or that, and they would do a lot of damage. So
The funny thing about paranoia is that it's not only the computer that's like a little bit whacked. It's the players you're playing with also all belong to secret societies,
Right.
and they may not correlate with your society. It
of
may
course
be
not. They
everything
might
is
be
like
at odds with the society.
yeah.
Like there's I remember a little bit. It's been a long time since I played or even looked at the rules, but there was like this one secret society that wanted to destroy all machinery. There's something smashers,
Right.
and the robotic, smashers. And then there was another society that was trying to preserve anything technical, logical. And so those two secret societies were at odds. And there's, of course, a bunch of different secret societies. And of course, before you went on a mission, the secret society would tell you, "Oh, we want you to do this," which, of course, would probably, if the other people found out, would be reason for summary execution or termination, they call it. So I think it was a very interesting way of using lethality as a way of convincing the players these characters are disposable, right? This is not D&D where you're gonna, especially not original D&D, but AD&D and other editions or like 5th edition where you make a character and you fall in love with your character and you cherish your character and you are devastated when that character meets their untimely demise. In this case, they go, "Oh, I got 5 other clones of my," and a clone is exactly the same character.
Yes,
right?
with a different number.
With a different number, same name and everything, but the last number is different. So it was a way of conveying this. These characters are disposable.
Now, when you died in paranoia, did your clone just pop in where you were?
No, I think in the original books, they all lived in this cubicle or like a pod. They called it a pod, and then they would get when they received that message that your clone was dead, they would transport them to the location. So later on in other years and other iterations of the rules, they came up with this idea of instead of having clones and living together and spending all that money and food and other products to keep those 6 people alive, they came up with this idea of instantaneous clones, that they would just grow a clone as quickly as possible. And then they came up with this idea that they had these pods that they would jettison and somehow arrived where the last clone was killed, or your other one was killed. But the reason they also added the idea that as you make a copy of a copy of a copy, they get worse and worse and worse. So again, the idea of this is lethality is to reinforce the idea that these guys are disposable, and it was this like really contentious setting where players would often get into firefights with each other simply because
they became paranoid.
They were paranoid, but something as simple as they're going down an elevator, the power goes out and it gets dark, and they start shooting the elevator, and then whatever happens in the elevator stays in the elevator, right? So I think that was one way that lethality was used in paranoia, is this idea that you can't be too concerned about your character because most likely they're not going to make it very far. It was sort of dark humor, paranoia. But it wasn't like horror.
No.
And horror is like COC, like Call of Cthulhu. And Call of Cthulhu, another percentile system. So far, that's 3 percentile systems.
Yes, it is.
And Call of Cthulhu is very has a lot of rules as to how to shoot, how to fight, and all this other stuff. These percentile systems usually have that kind of system where you get bonuses for this, and then you get minuses for like running, you get minuses for obscure or in the rain, or all these things that would impact combat would affect your roll. COC has that, but also the characters are extremely low powered. They're just normal people. They're not super super soldiers. They're not highly trained usually in combat. You might have somebody who's a police officer, but that's about as trained as you're going to get. They're not G.I. Joe or Arnold Schwarzenegger.
They're not superheroes.
Yes. And the reason for that is because the game is about humans being extremely fragile compared to the horrors of Cthulhu, right? And its ilk and its other...
It's minions.
Minions and other gods, dark gods that exist out there who are more than willing to eat humanity and keep going. And I think that is why Call of Cthulhu is based on this system. This system existed before. It's called basic role playing now, but back then it existed as a system that powered RuneQuest, and then it got developed a little bit and changed a little bit. Call of Cthulhu now uses basic role playing, which is the base of this percentile system. Again, so it's trying to convey that humans in this case are very fragile, both physically and
mentally.
Right, because you can go insane. So it's not only physical combat, but just seeing things, horrific things, would or could
makes you lose a little bit of sanity.
And when your sanity gets too low, it's practically like dying because
it's like why if a cop shoots his gun or somebody gets killed, you got to go to therapy, right? So you can talk through it, so you can get your sanity back.
Makes sense. Yes. So in this case, it's a different reason why it's lethal. It's to convey to the players that you are really vulnerable.
Yes.
And in a horror setting, that could make you scared. At least in the if you're playing your character right, the character's scared about things. Don't want to look around that corner. You don't want to go upstairs into the attic.
Well, that's why you have to roll. Like the keeper will tell you need to roll your sanity or a sanity check or something, because you just saw something that, one, you don't know what it is, and
or
two, something that shouldn't have happened.
Right.
So you need to make sure if you're okay with that.
Right. And that's why I think COC is deadly, is because along with your sanity, there's this physical component that you're fragile. Not only is your body fragile, but so is your mind.
So you're squishy all over.
Doubly squishy. So another horror game that's a little different is Alien the RPG. This one uses the Year Zero engine, which is
it's a dice pool system, right?
Dice pool with 6-sided dice. The reason, and it's the same reason why Call of Cthulhu characters are squishy, is because when you play characters in Aliens, you're just like space truckers, right? You're just
space truckers, or even space marines, right?
Well, yeah, but in the main game, there's no space marines. There's just
you're a pilot.
You're a cargo handler. You're a mechanic. And that's it. I mean, there's mundane.
And the GM will never let you carry the flamethrower.
Well, there's no flamethrowers on a
How
cargo,
do you know? There might
cargo
be
cargo freighter. Well, there's no flamethrowers on a cargo ship.
There might be.
I don't think so.
You never know when you need one.
Anyway, so in this case, you are in a spaceship. Usually, I've never played a game where they landed on a planet, but you could. But the idea is that you are squishy, and aliens, no matter what kind of alien it is, or
the little tiny ones that run up at you and try to kill you, or the big giant ones that just rip you open and kill you.
Right. So I think the message being conveyed to you is that you are very fragile also. But it's a different reason for using lethality in Alien than it is in Call of Cthulhu.
Well,
Call of Cthulhu, it's for horror.
Right. Well, Aliens is kind of horror.
It is a horror, but I think in Aliens, it's trying to raise the tension, right?
Yes, that's why they have the panic mechanic.
Right. And I think we call it panic. I think it's called the stress mechanic.
Okay, whatever.
In real life. But we call it the panic mechanic because if you panic, you get to roll on this panic table, and that's where things get really crazy and chaotic. You start having
you either sit down and start screaming, you can't move, different things happen.
Right. It's based on a table, and in some cases, it could cause a chain reaction of panicking. And I guess you could see this in certain movies and maybe in certain books when somebody starts panicking. Let's say on the front lines of World War One in the trenches, other people get rattled by seeing another person lose it.
Just was thinking about the Lord of the Rings movie, the second one, the Two Towers,
right?
Where they're on the wall and the Uruk-hai are coming towards them, and there's that old guy with the one eye.
Oh yeah,
and the bow, and he has it pulled back, and he accidentally releases it, but everybody stays calm, and until they tell him to do it, to send them a volley of arrows.
And I think now that you've brought up Tolkien, in the books, quite a few times the Uruk-hai, the orcs were, what do you call it, undisciplined in a certain sense. And Tolkien saw war, right? He was in World War One. And he saw what panicking could do to an army or whatever you call it, a group of soldiers. And we studied Roman history, of course, and we learned that a lot of times when the enemy broke, that was the deciding factor in a battle. Because when the discipline breaks, you start running away and everything falls apart. There's no defense. You're easier to get attacked. You're easier to hit. Once that ball starts rolling, it just this snowball effect happens. Yep. So I think in Alien, this panic mechanic or the stress mechanic and the panic tables utilize that idea that if somebody is panicking and having a meltdown or screaming fit or whatever, then it could cause other people to feel stressed out.
And that's true.
So again, and then the lethality of the game makes sure that that tension is always there. That anything, even another human, could kill you easily if they get a good shot on you.
Well, usually, and you don't know, like, you're usually on a ship with a med lab that something's in a container, a field is broken. You never know what's going to happen. The aliens might not kill you. It's all the other deadly things there that could kill you.
Right. Space can kill you, right?
Yes.
So let's move on to yet another percentile system. This one's been around for a while, Warhammer Fantasy. I would slash that with Dark Heresy / the other one in space. I forget what's the name of it. Anyway, so Warhammer Fantasy was this dark, gritty world. Players are not heroes. They're just regular. You start off with an occupation. That's what you do. And usually in the original rules, you would roll what your occupation is. So you didn't have a choice. If you were lucky, the GM would let you choose one. I always chose scribe because I like the idea of being a scribe. Of course, scribes don't make a lot of money, so you're dirt poor in a dirt poor world, and only the upper class has any kind of money and all the power. And it's very deadly, the system. It's a percentile system. You get bonuses for good things, and you get minuses for bad things. And the damage is lethal. Usually you can get hit with a weapon. That wasn't the lethal part, but it was kind of easy to get critical hits. And if you got a critical hit against you, you were surely in trouble, because once you got damaged, there's not a lot of magic. It's a very low magic setting. And then if you really want to get into it, they had all these tables for diseases and stuff like that, which
yuck
was not a pleasant thing.
I don't like tables for diseases.
So again, Warhammer had this idea of grittiness, of kind of a depressing, heroic against this tide of terribleness, and usually you wouldn't win. And usually it didn't end well for you, but you just kept doing it just to either get by or just to get ahead. Or if you were really a heroic type of character, you would do it because for the good of mankind or whatever your goals were. So making it lethal made this kind of a dark, gritty setting really bring it home.
I can tell you I've never played Warhammer, but
Yes.
it doesn't sound pleasant to me.
I would not play Warhammer Fantasy, but I would love to play and run Dark Heresy, which is your Inquisitor or sort of, and you're basically going out and trying to find heretics, which are bad things because that goes against the Empire, and it's a space one, so you get all kinds
As a
of-
heretic, I would like to say that
You don't want to out yourself as a heretic.
I don't know if that's I don't know that I want to play that game.
So yes, but I think it's mainly an investigative game. But the things that can come out and kill you can be either another human, or it could be it's kind of like Call of Cthulhu. It could be a demon or
Yeah.
a minion of a demon, and they're very powerful beings out there who are out to kill and punish humanity.
I'll just stay away from this game myself.
Yeah, it's a dark humor. It's a dark game,
Yeah.
dark future, dark fantasy setting, but it's pretty cool. There's a lot of background in this. They have a ton of books. I've never read any of them, even though I know friends have read them and really like them. And again, very interesting setting, but I think Lethality brings home that gritty, dark feeling. From space and Warhammer Dark Fantasy, we go to the Wild West. So, Tales of the Old West, it is what I call a straight Western. There's no undead, there's no magic, there's nothing arcane. It's literally a Western, something you would see in the 50s and 60s on the TV. Gunsmoke, rawhide.
Rawhide, my favorite. Captain Fava. Sorry.
Not captain.
He was.
Well, maybe I think
He was a captain.
Yeah, right. So other black and white shows from that era, Cheyenne.
When he
High
says black
Chaparral.
and white shows, he means that they weren't in color. Because if you don't know this, in the 50s and 60s, well, I think the 60s they started using color.
Yeah, some 60s.
Some of them. I'm just saying that so everybody understands what you're saying.
Well, maybe not most people know about black and white.
That's what I'm saying.
Black and white, there was no color.
On the
no
film.
color television sets, or they couldn't broadcast it in color. I don't know what the deal is, but anyway, it wasn't until the 70s, late 60s, 70s that color television sets really became the norm, and therefore they started making shows in color. So the High Chaparral was the other one.
High Chaparral was in color.
Was in color.
Yeah.
The Have Gun Will Travel, Wanted Dead or Alive. There's all kinds of shows, and even modern shows, or movies or series.
Anyway, it's the Wild West.
Yeah, it's
So
the
there's
Wild
that.
West.
I mean, it's before people really settled. There might have been a government around somewhere, but out in the prairie or along the river, the ranchers and stuff were the people that were in charge.
Right. So in this case, we're talking a very short, specific time in the United States history, probably sometime after the war, the Civil War, up until about 1890, I would think, would be at the very tail end of the longest you can think. So maybe 25, maybe 30 years of this time period of the Wild West. And it is wild, right? There was not necessarily too much law around. The West was open. There was Native Americans still on a lot of big parts of the land, and it was a contentious time in American history. There was the westward expansion. There was freedom of the slaves, and all kinds of things are happening in this time period. And unfortunately, for the most part, it was a very dangerous time to live because anybody could have a gun, and that's what would decide sometimes arguments, right? If everybody had a gun and people were mad at each other, a lot of things could happen. And in Tales of the West, it's lethal only because I think it's trying to be realistic, because you see a lot, even in westerns, even good westerns, the movies, or shows, people would get shot and they would go, oh, and then they would like be able still to do stuff. Now, I'm not saying that people don't get shot and still can do stuff, because we've heard tales or or verified accounts of soldiers in battle being shot and still being able to save like 10 people and their people, drag them back to safety. I think Audie Murphy was one. I don't know if he ever got shot, but bullets were whizzing past him and stuff. So he was a war hero. Look him up. It's pretty amazing.
Audie Murphy, isn't he the singer?
He was an actor. They made him an actor when he came back.
Okay.
Yeah. Little guy. It wasn't a big dude. Anyway, the idea that combat in the Wild West was very chaotic, right? It wasn't the idea of, I'm going to call you out at high noon tomorrow on Main Street. We're going to be 20 paces away from each other, and whoever flinches draws first, whatever. That usually did not happen. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I think there's been a couple actual verified accounts of somebody doing that. I think Hitchcock was one. But for the most part, it was these things happened when people were angry. It happened when people were drunk, and it happened spontaneously. A lot of improvised weapons were used, and even ambushes and attacking people in the back. So a lot of these gunfighters of fame, the reason they lived so many times or shot so many people, quite a few of them were because they were scumbags and shot people in the back. So there is this romantic idea of the Wild West. This game tries to get away from that. It tries to get to the nitty-gritty of what the Wild West was about. And ultimately, the only monsters in this game are other people. So when you got all these different types of people with different values and different goals, you're going to have some contention. And with the ease of weapons or availability of weapons, guns or even knives, things could get hairy quickly. And you don't instantly recover the next day and feel better. Like in this game, if you get shot in the leg and it's not a glancing or grazed wound, you're going to be in bed for a long time. It's not like you're going to get up and start walking around the next day. You'll be in bed or you'll be debilitated for a month or two, right? That's if you don't get sick and your leg doesn't rot off, which is entirely possible. So in this case, this lethality is about trying to be realistic, and also it's not about gunfighting, right? It's not about these shootouts. It's about people's interactions with other people and in the setting of the Wild West. And I think that's an interesting way to approach the Wild West genre. And I think if you really get into this game, I think it's very rewarding, because instantly you're not going to go to a firefight, right? That's not what you want to do, because firefights are deadly. I was just talking to Jolene about how somehow I got on this, what do you call it?
You got an algorithm where I started seeing, or they start putting in front of me, shootouts, right? Where police are interacting with people with guns, usually in the car, and the people, for whatever reason, decide to shoot at them. And sometimes they hit the cops, sometimes they don't. And you'll be amazed if you, and it's kind of disturbing because people are getting shot and killed in these videos, but it's kind of amazing to see how many shots people fire and how many bullets it takes fired to bring down somebody, right? Because I saw this one where there was two cops. One cop got hit in the shoulder, and he was out of it, right? He's like, "I'm hit," and you can hear him talking because they're on microphones. And he gets away. He goes behind somewhere, and this other guy just unloads his gun, right? Because you see him, what do you call it? Reload.
He takes out the magazine. He puts another one, and you see a woman who was in the passenger side get out of the car and run. She didn't even get hit, and this guy unloaded 15 rounds into the car.
This guy, you mean the police officer?
And that other guy was shooting guns,
yeah,
whatever, and nobody got hit until the second time he reloads, and then he gets his bearings, I think, and is able to hit the opponent or the bad guy. And this happens over and over again. I'm gonna kind of digress a little bit.
Oh no, don't.
So years ago, I used to play Dark Conspiracy, and somebody complained that the Dark Conspiracy rules were, especially the fighting rules or the range combat or gun combat, was unrealistic, because he said, "How can I miss so many times?" Blah 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 blah, because he didn't think that it was too hard to hit.
Has he ever done practice?
Well, I don't know.
Shooting a gun?
This was just an argument that somebody had, or a post that they put in a letter. This, I think, it was in a magazine. Like, it wasn't the Dragon, but it was another gaming magazine. And so somebody kind of like bust open the books and did some things. And so back then there wasn't the internet and with ease of use. So the person who did this, wanted to answer this question, looked at Border Patrol incidences. Right, and so there's action after
reports.
action reports, right? And anytime they shoot somebody or anytime they discharge their gun,
They have to write a
they have
report.
to write a report about what happened, how it happened, and it was.
You know why they have to do that, right? Because the bullets are so expensive. Sorry.
I think so. I think they just don't want people shooting things and not.
They need to keep track of all their bullets.
Yes, and charge them for every bullet. $500 every bullet. So in these action reports, it was amazing. I still remember reading it. Is how there was a Border Patrol was sees some people out in the night, and it happens to be drug dealers, right, or drug couriers,
Right.
And so they stop them, and immediately a gunfire starts. A gunfight starts. Of course, it's dark, right? It's
Right.
dark. And they have flashlights and stuff. And I forget, it was an amazing amount of bullets, right? About how many people were in the gunfight. I think there was like 3 Border Patrol agents and like 5 guys on the other side.
Did anyone die?
Yes. So there was like 156 rounds shot and collected, the shells. And only one person got hit. And it was, had to be by accident because he got hit in the neck and he died. Bad guy. Everybody else ran away, right? And these reports, he used like 5 or 6 reports of these things happening, where a lot of bullets were shot, and almost nobody was hit, or if they were hit, they were like grazed, hit, like usually, supposedly. I'm not an expert by any means. Is that most people train to hit center of mass?
Yes, that's what you're supposed
right?
to. That's what
because that's the biggest target, and if you shoot them there, most people will go down. Though some people refute the idea that 9mm will not bring
anyway.
down. Blah 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 blah. Right, exactly. But it was a real life incidences where people were shooting a lot of bullets, and a lot of bullets didn't hit target.
Well, and I think when you're playing a game and you're shooting your whatever you're shooting, when you're rolling to hit, I think it's probably pretty accurate. Like, because I've seen people at target practice miss the person on the target with the whole clip.
Well, I've been target shooting. I think I went once with the real guns, and I might add I was very good. I don't know why.
Yes, he brought home his
I brought back my
target.
I shot the hell out of that thing, and I think that's one. I'm not saying I was gifted, but there's some natural talent of keeping your arm steady and being able to shoot straight.
Well, and they make cops. They take tests to be able to do this. Right. But that doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to be in real life, obviously, because when you're shooting at a target, it's not shooting back at you.
Right. I mean, there's all kinds of things. I think a big one is adrenaline. You start, getting, and generalized, I guess, and your senses or whatever.
So there's either fight or flight.
But even in the fight part, if you're going to stay in fight, you're not calm. I think is what the situation is.
It depends on if you're trained or not.
Depending on the training, and I think that is what most people are like, right? They aren't trained, and if you are trained, you're shooting usually. Well,
if you're trained, you probably don't have a.
Nobody's ever shot you. Don't shoot you back.
Yeah.
With live fire, right? So you're shooting at targets, and you could be a really good target shooter, but that doesn't mean that when somebody's shooting back at you, you're going to be able to hit them with one shot, because you're going to be worried about getting hit. And I think that's what happens is people are running, dodging, and I'm using air quotes, trying to get out of the way. And I think that's why I think most games that are
trying to be realistic
make it very hard for people to hit in a gun battle. I'm not saying targets. So in this particular game, I think there's a lot. You can shoot a lot and you can miss a lot, but unfortunately, if you get hit, there's also critical hits, and they could be very dangerous. And it's just a luck, right? It's the luck of the dice roll. If you get really lucky on your dice pool, you can get a critical hit, and if you get a critical hit, like a critical hit to the head, most likely your character's going to die.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
But that's the way it is in real life too, right?
And yeah, exactly. So I think in that sense, that's why this game is lethal, because it's not about gunfights. It's not about gun battles. It's about people's
Realism.
interactions.
Yeah. And
what adventures you can have in that kind of genre. So in closing,
Saul's final thoughts on the matter.
Final thoughts are, so I think there's various reasons why certain systems are lethal, right? And that's what I try to convey in this episode and in my thoughts and in my notes, is that they're trying to do different things. Sure, there might be a mix of these things, and some might be more than one of these things that I'm going to say. But for the most part, games are lethal for a reason. They're not just lethal because they think it's funny or it'll be fun, but there's a certain feeling they're trying to convey as a role-playing game. So number one, realistic. That usually is the top of the list as when games are lethal, and usually some games are like ridiculously lethal.
Before you go on with your list, I was just going to tell you that. What about a game like Ghost Ops? Is it very lethal? No.
You guys are
because you're highly trained.
Highly trained. I mean, you could get killed, but you could probably get shot once or twice. Right. And we're talking with rifle rounds, so.
Right.
I mean, you could live. I think soldiers have lived all the time.
Yeah.
But they're not going to get up and fight right away.
No, but they would live. They just wouldn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't continue doing special.
I'm just saying there's other games that deal with the same kind of subject matter. Like, but those are like mercenaries going out and doing stuff, right? So they're highly trained.
And highly trained, and I think it's a certain genre where
right.
They don't want to be lethal. They want that perception of lethality, but also, what is it? Juxtapose that with that your characters are extremely trained,
right?
And you will be extremely They're equipped. They were very well equipped.
So I think that fits in with the. What was that one that you just said?
Realistic,
because if you're really trained like that, it might be a little bit easier for you to survive.
Right. And I think games that are trying to be realistic, they're going to be super deadly. They're trying to, and sometimes they're very complicated.
Yeah.
There was this game called Living Steel was one, and it had to do with armor combat. People were like in armor, power armor kind of thing.
Oh, jeez.
And it was like,
anyway,
it's like calculus.
So it was
to do the things. And even simple games that I remember Stalking the Night, Fantastic, which is it was a percentile system, and if it had optional rules, and some of the options were like blood loss, right, and blood points, and so not only hit points, but if you got a hit and then there was hydrostatic shock, that's the damage that the bullet does while it goes through the body. And depending on where you got shot, you would get extra damage for hydrostatic shock. Right, it could be nauseating, the extra rules. So realism is one, being realistic. The next one is tension, like an Alien. You're trying to raise the tension of the game because you know the game is deadly. You just don't want your character to die too early or too soon. Maybe you wouldn't mind your character dying in the blaze of glory, but you don't want to have him fall and hits his head on the bulkhead and you're dead. Not very fun. The feeling of horror, COC. You're up against things that are horrific and could easily take you out.
Yeah.
And even a cultist who is just a human who's nuts could take you out if they get lucky. So I think that is an example of that.
That can happen anytime with a cultist.
And then there's always the idea of showing how fragile humans are, and that comes from that's touched upon in Call of Cthulhu, Tales of the Old West, Dark Heresy, and Warhammer, that show that humans, for the most part, are very fragile when it comes to modern weapons or futuristic weapons, or even swords and knives and stuff like that. And in a sort of a morbid way, even they do it for humor. This idea that if it's really lethal, like in Paranoia, that your character can die, and knowing full well that another character will take its place. Was it the Kobolds Ate My Baby? That one is exactly that.
Well, and I think that if it's a deadly game and the GM says, I have extra characters if you die, you know that, it's a possibility that you're gonna die.
High possibility.
High possibility.
Yes, and they tell you that because they don't want you to get too attached to the characters that you have.
And that comes from the fact that a lot of people play D&D and they get attached to their characters as they go up all the levels.
I'll tell you a quick story. One of my friends, Dark Ages of Cthulhu, right? And one of my other friends decided to play, and my friend who had never played Dark Ages was mainly a D&D player. And the GM warned him. He goes, "This is not Dungeons and Dragons." The player quickly died. The character, not the player. His character quickly died, and he wasn't too upset, and he was handed a second character, which was was a really low life character. So, or low
level
character.
Yeah.
Well, they're all low
level.
even lower level. He goes, "You really got to be careful with this one." So I think that game is not humorous, but like say Paranoia. And Kobolds Ate My Baby, and other games like that where it's easy to die. I think there's some sort of morbid, humorous component to that kind of RPG.
So there you go. If you want to play a deadly, was that what it was called?
Well, lethal or
a lethal game
RPG.
There's a list of them,
and there's a different reasons why they're lethal.
Good luck. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
You have a good day.